This is for changing the paddles and a belt for a Honda HS520. Oh, and we'll also be doing the spark plugs. As you can see, the paddles have become really worn and the snowblower has become very ineffective. Doesn't really do a good job of throwing the snow. As you can see, it's a single stage, so it relies on these paddles having a sharp edge. And this snowblower is about 15 years old, so it's been through a lot of New England winters and has become very worn. So I ordered new paddles, a new drive belt, and a new spark plug, and this should be running as good as new once it's all repaired. I do show the model number for the belt here, and as you can see, it's a Honda product. It's also made for Mitsubishi. And here you'll also see a spark plug. It's important that you do this. This is a really easy thing to change, and it will improve the performance of the engine, is what I've found. I also show the scraper that gets installed at the base of the snowblower, but I'm not showing you the part numbers for all the paddles. I think there are a total of 6 different paddles. I found a whole kit on Amazon. I think this, if I'm not mistaken, was about $50, $60 for the whole kit. You can also see the tool kit that I use right there. It's a Stanley socket and wrench kit, which will give you everything you need to change this. Size 10 for the nuts for the middle paddles. You can see I use an impact wrench or an impact gun, which makes the process a lot easier. I didn't really find that the hardware was all that rusted or stuck, so I don't think an impact gun is necessary. You could just use a regular socket and a screwdriver if you need it, but it's up to you, of course. As you can see, here's the difference between the new and old paddle. I think there was at least a ½ of an inch of material missing just from wear over the years. So, and I'll tell you, I'm making this video after I ran the snowblower after a few snowstorms, and the improvement from what the old paddles were providing to how they were functioning when they were brand new is very dramatic. So this is definitely worth the effort and the time, and I think it's minimal money compared to buying a new snowblower. So you can see putting the paddles back on is really easy. Just use the same hardware. Even though this hardware has been on the snowblower for years and years, it was not difficult to reuse it. I didn't find any hardware that was too rusty, or that I had to cut off with an abrasive wheel or anything like that. So kudos to Honda for using good hardware. The paddles do have an orientation. There's a fabric reinforced enforcement, and if you just look, just make sure that the fabric reinforcement that is closer to the surface is close to the metal that you're bolting it to. That'll become more clear as you're doing this process, so just keep an eye out for that. Alright, so now I'm moving on from the middle pedal to the side pedal. I had to use a universal joint attachment just because my impact wouldn't line up with the nut without an angle. I also have to use a flat head screwdriver to hold the bolt from one side so it wouldn't spin when removing the nut on the other. And each of the long paddles have 3 bolts. There are 2 as you can see there, and then there's a single on the outer. And to get to that, I couldn't use the impact, I had to use a number 10 millimeter wrench and the screwdriver. As you can see, these side paddles are also very worn, just like the middle. And here I've got a new paddle being installed. It is finger tight. I found it was helpful to finger tight all three of the bolts and nuts first, just to get everything lined up, and then go back after and tighten them with either the impact with the universal or the wrench. I found that hand tightening everything works just fine. No need to over tighten. And then on the inner two bolts, there was enough room that I could get my impact back in there and tighten those up, just to speed up the process a little bit. But again, I didn't really wrench on these too much. And that's it. Repeat the process for the other paddles. Here we're changing the spark plug. Open up your door. Found it difficult, so I had to use pliers. Well, I was also doing this on a pretty cold day. It was probably about 10 degrees outside, so difficult to grab hold of things when it's so cold. I also found just grabbing and hold of and wiggling the spark plug connector helped. Just be careful here not to damage it. It's a 13/16 spark plug socket. Here's a new socket. Just wanted to test it to make sure I had the right one. You can see it was not very tight, nor does it need to be. So just make sure that when you're putting it back in and you're tightening, you're only applying the same amount of force that you needed to remove it. 15-year-old spark plug. And here's a new one going in. Just make sure you line them up. Make sure that they look approximately the same. These come pre-gapped, so take them out of the box, put them in your socket, and install. Now here, when you're installing the spark plug, make sure you hand tighten and hand thread initially. This should go on very easily. You don't want to use your socket ratchet to install the spark plug, get it started. You want to get it started hand tight every time. You'll cross thread it if you do it with the socket or with the ratchet. And here you can see I just gave it until it started to snug up, and you can feel the crush washer starting to yield and crush down to seal, and just keep turning until you feel some resistance, and then that's it. That's as tight as you need to be. Put the electrical connector back on top, snug it down in. I found that you had to really kind of work this down to get it to seat properly. So make sure that is seated all the way down on the new spark plug. And reinstall your door. Alright, next is the plastic scraper that goes in the bottom. But I did find if I used a adjustable wrench, or I guess you'd call it a channel lock pliers on one side and just hold the nut, and then get the impact on the bolt on the other side. You can see I've got the snowblower blocked up with a piece of 4x4. You just have to keep the bolt from spinning, and then you're able to back off the nut. So repeat this for the ones that are stuck, and you'll be fine. And again, I'm going to reuse this hardware, so it wasn't damaged or anything. Again, compare both, make sure they look the same. And reinstall in reverse order. Next, start to take off the cover. Some of the bolts have nuts on the inner portion of where the paddles are. You'll need a wrench to hold the nut while you remove the bolt from the outside. Others have weld nuts, so you just need to remove the bolt to get the cover off. So the belt engages when you pull the engagement lever at the controls, so that's how it works. Otherwise it just sits there and slips. So this belt wears out after time, but it's super easy to replace. Just kind of wrestle it off. It's a little tight down here where this roller is. Pretty straightforward. There's some debris at the bottom that you're going to want to kind of flake off and get out of your way. That's it. New belt's installed. I tried to remove as much of the rust and dirt and flaking paint as possible, but I didn't get too crazy because more will just happen over the years. Reinstall the cover. Once you got everything back together, start it up, give it a test. And the snowblower is probably good for another 10 to 15 years of use if you take good care of it. Thank you and enjoy.